Hello and welcome to another edition of Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. I'm Captain Rick Riles. Hey, we're going to have a lot of fun this afternoon, and here's how we're going to kick it off. We'll make a quick trip over to Paradise because I got to get my billfish fix from my man Craig Sutton in Nosara, Costa Rica. Then we're going to hit the northeast corner of Florida, work our way all the way down the east coast. We'll be following the mullet run. We'll check out what's going on in the Keys, and we'll start up the west coast. The snook and reds are biting there. I tell you what, come up into the Big Bend, white marlin, you believe that? Out of Destin. We're going to check everywhere. Every one of the inlets will get a call from us. So sit back, get you a drink, and we're going to get started with today's Florida Sportsman Action Spotter Podcast. It's brought to you, as always, by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum, the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And by Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids, you need to check out youngboats.com. Ha-ha! It's time to stop in Paradise. I've never found a billfish destination to rival Nosara, Costa Rica. Let's find out what Craig Sutton's up to. I understand his boats are back in service. What's going on, Cap?
Well, now, not all of them. We dropped the harvester in the water last Friday, had a group show up on Saturday. They fished yesterday. They're fishing tomorrow. They're fishing tomorrow and Wednesday, or tomorrow and Thursday, excuse me. They're pretty good. Got a couple nice Dorado and a sailfish and missed a sailfish and had a shot at a marlin, but they were too. He popped up in the spread, banged on a teaser a little bit, and then steered off. But that's all right. Water was cobalt blue too, and it wasn't that far out, which is kind of a good sign for November for us too.
So it sounds like fishing's back to normal. When do you get more boats going?
We're going to start. I'm heading down there tomorrow to put 2 rub rails on. Kind of finished putting the tanks in. I changed my system on how we mount those tanks in. And let me see. I've got a couple little small fiberglass patches to put on, and then we're ready to go back in the water.
Yes, and please, let's tell our listeners that those 2 little fiberglass patches don't mean holes in the bottom of the boat.
Yeah, I tell you, I'm real pleased with the work we did this year. It's the paint job on the Discover and the Wonder really came out. It's been a long road to hoe to figure out how to work with that gel coat and get it to come out right, but I guess after 15 years, we're kind of getting it down pat.
Getting it down to a science. Fantastic. How are your bookings looking for the rest of the year?
Oh, real good. Real good. I think, I think we're going to be back to normal, if not a little bit above. We've, we're obviously way ahead from what we were last year, and we're kind of back to when the economy's been real good in the past.
And I got to tell you, November be a great month to be down there. There ain't no doubt about that. I
can't wait. I'm heading down the Saturday before Thanksgiving week with my kids and grandkids. Shoot, I'm going to be so ready for that because I got this week down there doing work. And, oh, by the way, we got to do the 600 grit and the 900 grit cut on those boats too.
Yikes.
And but then I got Fort Lauderdale at the end of the month, which is a week show, really. I mean, it's 5 days of show, but it's 2 days to set up and then a day to tear down. So trust me, I'm going to be ready by Thanksgiving week to take a few days off.
I'm sure you are. Well, I will see you in Fort Lauderdale, but I will talk with you next week. Thank you, Craig. Our thanks to Craig Sutton for a great Nosara report. Now, time to hit the northeast corner and check in with our man, David Voorhees. Cap, how we doing?
Hey, it's been a good week, Ricky. It's been a real good week. Water temperatures are dropping back down, which I was sort of happy to see, with this warm weather we had. I saw water temperatures jump back up to 82 degrees, and it just seemed to shut the fish down. It was strange as all get out. They were biting so good. And then, a 2 degrees or almost a 3 degrees uptick, it seemed like the fish didn't like it, at least the redfish. Flounder really bit good this week. Oh, my gosh, we had some phenomenal flounder this week. Some not really big ones, but some really good flounder to take home and some good numbers too. And you're talking to someone who, I'm not out there targeting flounder, just targeting redfish. On an average day, we're getting anywhere from 5 to 10 flounder. Yeah, and that really sweetens the pot up, when you get people come out and just want to catch a couple of reds. But the redfish back in the creek and the deep holes have been really productive for me this week, or I should say this past weekend, because it's just, sometimes on weekends I can't fish the intercoastal. It just gets so
too
busy.
Much traffic, sure.
Too much traffic, and I think that does sort of knocks these fish down, sort of spooks them up, or they don't want to bite as good. So I tend to go back in these creeks. We're not seeing really super low tides. We are seeing some good high tides. The winds have been brisk. I told my people yesterday, look, I'd rather go out there and see a wind like this, which, it put a chop on the water. It was windy. It probably was gusting up to 15, but I'd rather see that than no wind at all when it comes to fishing for redfish. I find when it's calm.
You're right. Slick calm.
Yes, when it's dead calm, those fish really get spooky. They sort of, they see everything. And plus, I think there's an added amount of oxygen put back into the water when it gets windy and choppy like that. And I've read on lakes with bass and stuff like that, it tends to generate the fish when there's more oxygen being pumped in there. Some good numbers of trout, hearing about some good trout being caught down in the valley and in parts of the St. Johns River. Myself, I haven't seen any really. It hadn't been a good year for me on the trout, but we're picking up a few here and there. But the redfish it's just been fantastic year for the reds, and a fantastic year for the flounder and the mangrove snappers, and those have been the three biggies this year as far as inshore fishing goes.
David, I got to tell you, I know I'm not telling you anything, but we need to remind everybody that flounder, when you put your rods up on Friday evening, it's over. It's over for 6 weeks. And I hope that works out well for all of us. I really do.
Yeah, and they like to sort of go out there when that law is just being introduced. Now, the good thing is a lot of times they won't write tickets, but they're going to be out there checking everybody probably this weekend. So prepare to see an uptick in the Marine Patrol this weekend. And I think they're going to be pulling a lot of people over, checking them. And a lot of times in that first week, they'll write a bunch of warnings. But next week, it's all over with. If you get caught, you're going to be in trouble.
Yep. Along with everything else, along with the price of milk and gas, fines are also going up. A friend of mine accidentally, because he was from the West Coast where the sea bass size limit is 12, he had 4 12-inch sea bass. Over here, it's 13. That cost him $1,600.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Oh, my goodness.
That's a fine.
Well, Ricky, the offshore's been I know this north wind and northeast has sort of has to be pretty nasty out there. Any wahoos?
You know what?
What's the story on wahoo?
Yes, there are wahoo. It has been nasty for all the small boats, too nasty. Some of the bigger boats have made it. The Jody Lynn 2 reported the other day that 4 wahoo came up behind their boat in a group while they were bottom fishing. And they got one on, and they lost him at the boat. He finally got the hook just right and bit through the monofilament leader. And the captain said that fish was every bit of 80 pounds. But
oh my!
What's gone on very interesting for whatever reason is triggerfish have moved within 10 miles of the beach, which is very rare. Captain Robert Simon was out earlier this week and had 20 triggerfish on a 4-hour charter. That's a really, really good day for a short trip like that. So there are triggerfish inshore. There aren't any sea bass yet to speak of. There are some blackfin tuna, and there are some wahoo.
Well, that sounds worth getting out for.
Yes, sir. It sure does. David, I appreciate the heck out of it. We'll talk with you next week.
All right, Ricky. Tight line.
Thanks, you too. Our thanks to David Borges for a great Northeast Florida report. Now let's take a minute and head down to Central Florida and check in with none other than Jim Ross. Jim, how's it going?
Doing very good this week, Rick.
Good. I was thinking about this the other day. I guess you and Troy Perez are the longest running guides out of your area.
Yeah, I would say we're definitely two of the old school guys for sure.
Your grandfathers is what you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
When it comes to fishing, anyway. Jimmy, tell me what you're catching.
Well, the top of the tide of the beach has settled back down, and the mullet are starting to run down it. The top of the tide right now seems to be the best. The last 2 hours of incoming, first 2 of outgoing. We're getting a lot of sharks, tarpon, snook, and redfish. You can kind of pick at the snook and reds throughout the rest of the tide, but especially around the low tide, they're not nearly as cooperative as they have been on those upper stages. So I would recommend if you've got the time, get out there when the tide is up. Don't just go when you can go, kind of thing. It's definitely going to pay dividends. Live menhaden are working really well. Mullet are working well. Croakers have kind of slowed down. They're not hitting them as much as they were. So I wouldn't invest a whole lot of stock in croakers like we were, for the last 4 or 5 months when that seemed to be the best way to get them to bite. And then
it's funny. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It's funny though. I talked to a guy that fishes out of Captain Hiram's the other day. Told me the exact same thing and said he'd been catching them on pinfish of all the crazy things.
Yeah, possibly. We don't really have many pinfish around here, but the menhaden have been very nettable, and we've had some pretty good schools of them in the Canaveral Bight area and out along the Southeast Shoal. So that's what we've been doing, is just throwing the net on those, and they've been working pretty good on those upper stages of the tide.
Is your surf still full of mullet?
I wouldn't say it's full, but we're getting more. Okay. You'll actually see more around the jetties at lower stages of the tide than you will at the upper stages. Huh. But the bite is still better on the upper stage of the tide.
All right. You heard anything from offshore? Anybody out at all?
A couple of dolphin and a couple of cobia started showing up this week. The cobia seemed to be on those 130, 150-foot wrecks, which is a little deeper than what we normally find them. But they seem to be following, if there's a weed line or a rip or a color change, they seem to be following along with the dolphin that are on those particular features. So, have a jig or a bottom rod ready that, if you're going down a weed line and you look at your GPS and say, hey, I'm coming up on a wreck, wreck so-and-so, stop on that thing just for a second, at least drop a jig or maybe a live bait on a jig down, just to see what happens as you can drift across it. You basically you'll be surprised because a lot of cobia, and they're actually legal size cobia, are coming from the guys that are doing that. There's not many guys doing it, but the guys that are doing it have been very successful with it.
That's an outstanding tip. Jim, we appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Well, I look forward to it, Rick.
I do too, buddy. It's always good talking to you. We'll talk to you next week. Thank you, Captain Jim Ross from the Space Coast. Now let's head on down to my favorite little fishing village, Stuart, Florida, and check in with one John Earhart. John, how are you?
I'm good. Glad to be here, Rick.
Glad to have you, buddy. Tell me, I'm hearing of a lot of mahi in Miami. Have they made it up that way?
Believe it or not, we're not really getting a lot of mahi right now. I mean, we're getting a few here and there, but the predominant pelagic players right now are going to be the blackfin tuna and the cobia. We're getting a lot of cobia, blackfin tuna, a few mahi, and some wahoos. So, I mean, there's a good mixed bag, a few sailfish, but most of this action's 80, 90 foot of water. So, we're drifting live baits. We're catching blackfin tuna up to 20, 25 pounds. We're catching a bunch of cobia. If you push out a little bit deeper outside that, once you've caught plenty of blackfin tuna and cobia, you're going to be more likely to catch mahi and wahoo, in 180 to maybe 300 feet of water. Some guys are just drifting live baits. Some people are trolling. And then some guys are also vertical jigging them right now and just putting a tracer wire on their vertical jig. You're not really going to mark any of these fish, but if you're in an area kind of near a current condition or weed line, or even some kind of even small structure on the surface like floating debris, sometimes dropping that vertical jig down is going to catch a fish you normally wouldn't catch trolling. So it's a good alternative to have tied up on one of your larger reels for, an added fish to be put in the box.
Sure sounds like it. Now, John, what do you make of these cobia? Are these fish migrating down for the winter, or why all of a sudden are they showing up?
I mean, they could be migratory fish, or they could be residential fish that are just grouping up together on the reef. And, when they come near these artificial wrecks, there's plenty of anglers out there to intercept them. I think throughout the year, these fish kind of spread out. And then, every once in a while they come back on the reefs to hang out and feed. Like there could be a bunch of threadfin hanging out on these deeper reefs and artificial wrecks. And that might be why we're catching them. They could be migrating too, but FWC is doing the research so that we'll actually know in the coming years whether these are residential fish or they're migrating fish. And that's the great thing about tagging.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And I think tagging them is an excellent idea. John, anything going on inshore at all?
Yeah, the inshore has been phenomenal. The mullet run is full bore right now. We got mullet of all sizes along the beaches and in the river. Plenty of snook and tarpon, big jacks, sharks, redfish, sea trout. I mean, it's an inshore fisherman's dream come true because, there's plenty of bait and there's plenty of predators. You just got to play what I call the mullet lottery. You got to throw your bait out there or your artificial enough times, and you got to get a predator to see it and strike it out of 1,000 or 10,000 other baits that are in the same general area.
I gotcha. I understand. That sounds fantastic. I tell you, John, you guys have got it going on year-round down there now, and having it start back up this early in the fall looks like it's going to keep right on rolling. Thank you so much. Can we talk with you next week?
Yes, sir. I look forward to giving you a report next week.
Thanks, Captain John Earhart from Stuart, Florida. Now, let's hop on down to Miami and check in with Captain Alan Sherman. Alan, how are you?
I'm doing fine, Rick. How are you?
Outstanding, buddy. Outstanding. How's fishing in South Florida?
Fishing in South Florida is excellent. It's just the way you'd expect it to be at this point in October. We've got everything going on except for the cold weather fish, the mackerels, the bluefish, the kingfish. Well, we got some kingfish, but not the big schools yet. Water temperatures are still pretty high at the moment, so we haven't had any cold weather yet, but that's coming. Maybe you've seen it so far.
Not really. I wish I could say I have. Now, I did Sunday morning because I went up to the hunting camp up in Pinehurst, Georgia, and it felt so good when I walked outside. But it didn't disappoint at all, but it came back here, and sure enough, it's hot again.
Well, I'll say we'll take whatever we have right now because the fishing's really good. We have a lot of mullet in the area, the medium-sized silver mullet. There's some big black mullet as well, and then there's some decent-sized schools of finger mullet. We haven't seen gigantic schools yet, but there's plenty of finger mullet in the bay and along the shorelines of the beaches. And the big tarpon, the big snook, they are just trashing these schools as they come by on the ocean side and into the inlets. So the guys fishing mullet, free-lining them or fishing them near the bottom are doing really well on these snook and tarpon. One of the things people usually when they're fishing a mullet for tarpon or snook, they'll just, they'll free line it. They'll hook it either through the back or through the nose and let that bait swim with the school. And they wonder why they're not getting struck. And the reason, of course, is there's so many mullet for those fish to go after. They never find the one on your hook. But if you, put a little weight on that bait, like a 1 ounce sinker, 1.5 ounce sinker, and make that bait fall below the school, it's easy pickings, and it's a quick strike.
What a great tip! That's a fantastic tip. We see it up here. It's so funny to me, Alan. I will see guys flounder fishing, and they're flounder fishing, say, in 3 feet of water, but for whatever reason, they've got a 2-foot leader in front of their live mullet. Well, what does their mullet do? He comes to the top of the water. I mean, he's not dumb, and
exactly.
And we look funny with 6-inch leaders, but we're a lot more effective with 6-inch leaders in getting that bait down deep. You're absolutely right.
If you ever watch these videos that these guys are taking on the beaches when the tarpon go into these schools of mullet, you'll see that, and the aerial views as well, you'll see the tarpon kind of corral the mullet to a tight group, and then 1 or 2 fish will come up from underneath it and go right through the school. And they're not picking off one individual bait. They're just going for whatever's in the way. So if you can make your bait more visible to them, your chances of getting a strike are much better.
Sure.
And by adding that little bit of weight, or maybe disabling the mullet, chopping the tail a little bit to make him swim less, makes that bait stand out, and it's an easier strike.
Yep. I've done the same thing with pogies to the same result, Alan. Back when I was guiding tarpon, we would catch one of a million pogies, cut his tail, slow him down, make him swim different, little weight on him, and he'd get eaten every time.
Well, the way to target these fish in our area, because there's not a lot of beaches that you can fish, they just, the lifeguards won't let you unless you're there before they take their stations. So you have to get up early. You got to be there before the sun comes up. Maybe you get a half an hour of daylight to fish before they'll chase you away. But there's other ways. You can go to Haulover Inlet, the jetties there. You can fish off the jetties. Some of the parts of Government Cut on the jetties on the north side are fishable. Port Everglades, part of the jetties there, you can fish as well. The only thing is you have to wait for these mullet schools to move through. So you could be sitting there for a half an hour, and there's nothing happening. And then all of a sudden, here comes this black mass of something, and everything goes crazy.
That sounds fantastic. That doesn't sound bad.
Moving further offshore, we're having right now some of the best mahi-mahi dolphin fishing we've had all year. There are big schools of lifters and gaffer-sized dolphins. They're chasing these large schools of ballyhoo and small flying fish. Frigate birds are over top of them trying to pick off the injured bait fish, and the dolphin are hungry and plentiful. Almost everybody that's going out right now is hitting these dolphins, and they're not that far offshore now. They're right from the blue water edge, the west side of it, all the way out. But, if you're in 300 feet and the blue water edge is there, you have a great shot at these fish. If you have to go a little further out to find that edge, go ahead and do it, because those fish are there and they're hungry. A little closer inshore, there's blackfin tunas, there's sailfish, there's kingfish, there's bonitas. Maybe not a ton of sailfish, but almost everybody that's kite fishing is getting a few shots each day on the sailfish. There's a good mutton snapper bite on the bottom. And then one other thing on the offshore side, they're catching a lot of wahoo, small wahoo, under sizable pieces of floating debris.
Right.
So if you come across something like that and there's some bait around that, drop a vertical jig down and start working that thing. 200 feet to the surface, you should get a quick hookup on some of these wahoo. In the bay, the bay fishing is thing.
Hold on a second. Do you put a little trace of wire on top of that vertical jig?
If you want it. You want to keep your vertical jig. Yes, you do.
Okay. All right. Just checking.
Well, those wahoo, they got some pretty sharp teeth.
Indeed they do, my boy. I promise you that. But, okay.
A lot of those vertical jigs come with a hook that has like a nylon line that holds them, and those wahoo, they'll cut that off too. So if you want to protect your $10 lure, put a piece of wire on there for sure.
Gotcha.
I was mentioning the inshore fishing. That's what I do, and it's been very good with those finger mullet around. There's been a lot of snook feeding on them, tarpon as well. I've seen 80, 100-pound tarpon feeding on the bigger mullet. Big crevalles chasing them as well. Some nice sized sea trout too. So we got a lot going on here, and it's only going to get better as more bait fish move into our area.
What a great report, man! I haven't heard you so up about your fishing in a while. That's fantastic.
South Florida is pretty hot during the summer.
Yeah.
Not a lot happens when it heats up like that. If you're not fishing at night, then you might as well stay home, because it's just darn, it's difficult.
Yep.
So now things are cooling down. The bait fish are here, and we're having fun.
We've got a little bit of a cool down here, but man, I went up to my hunting property in North Georgia yesterday, stepped outside and went, oh man, this feels good.
Well,
Alan,
I'm glad to hear that.
We appreciate the heck out of it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Look forward to it.
Thank you, Alan. Take care. Now it's time to check in with Captain Bean. That would be Brandon Storen from Alamorada in Bud and Mary's. Cap, how we doing?
I'm doing great, Rick. How are we doing today?
Doing fine. You been on the water?
Yep. Actually, I just got in.
Well, talk to me. How was it?
It was great. We caught a lot of muttons, some zero mackerels, and some yellowjacks. We went to just go and scope out the Patch Reefs, here in October. you get a lot of fish that come in and start pushing shalloward, and it was a lot of fun on light tackle, a lot of action.
Oh, that's way cool. How deep were the muttons?
20 feet of water.
Legal fish?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go on. You can't have muttons in 20 feet of water.
We've seen them on a flat in the ocean side.
Isn't that something? That is absolutely fantastic. And today was all patch reef fishing, huh?
That's right. Yeah, but yesterday I went out back. More redfish are showing up by day. Snook bite was really good. Tarpon is very hit or miss. You got a short window of opportunity for tarpon. And we've been seeing a lot of cool little Goliath groupers around too.
Sounds like you're live baiting. What are you using?
Right now we actually are having a lot of pilchards show up.
Good.
So, there's been a lot of pilchards around the boats around the islands. Time of year where we start netting up pilchards, and that's been the bait of choice.
Hey, let me ask you a question. Every day people trailer their boat to the Keys, okay? When a guy brings his boat to the Keys for the first time, what doesn't he know?
The water, the flat.
Okay.
Oh, man. If you ain't been around, you probably ran aground down here.
If you ain't been around, you probably ran aground. I like that.
Yeah, so that's probably the number one thing is just the waterways, and go from 6 feet to 6 inches so quick down here. Mm-hmm. So we definitely see a couple times a week people running aground.
Oh, man, that is a lot. And sometimes it's not sand. I mean, you can whack a coral head down there.
Hard bottom. Yep.
Woo! That's not good for your lower unit. All right, so get you a good chart and put the chip in your machine and study it before you go anywhere in the Keys. Is that your advice?
That's my advice for sure.
Well, your report was great, and so was your advice. Brandon, we appreciate it as always. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. I'll be around.
Thanks, Cap. Talk to you later. We're going to head on over to the West Coast and find out what's going on in 10,000 Islands. But first, let's take a minute and hear from D.O.A. Whew, it's finally fall, and how many of us have been waiting for the magic of the mullet run to start, with literally miles of mullet moving along just about every area of Florida's coastline. What you need to cash in on snook, reds, trout, tarpon, and flounder that are feasting on the poor fingerlings is the perfect mullet imitation. Well, for my money, you can skip all the high-dollar made-in-China mullet imitators. For me and all the podcasters I've talked with, the perfect mullet imitation is made right here in Stuart, Florida, and that's the D.O.A. Bait Buster. Mark Nichols, the owner and manufacturer of the D.O.A., spent years designing different bait busters to swim shallow, medium, or deep. What makes Bait Buster so special? I think it's the tail. If your bait buster is moving, his tail is flapping. No predator can stand that tail flapping in his face. The D.O.A. Bait Busters, the perfect mullet run bait. Our thanks to Brandon Storen for an excellent Alamorada report. Gosh, it sounds like fishing's getting good. Let's see if that's the same thing going on over in 10,000 Islands. Talk to me, Steve Dahl.
Oh, it's here.
Oh,
it's
man.
Upon us. Red October is here.
That's cool. What are you catching?
Well, redfish are here, but albeit, same pattern where, it's unseasonably warm still, and we're still waiting for that very first, really good cold front, and maybe 2 good cold days to kind of push these fish in. And what's happening is a kind of a cool deal. The fish, these schools of redfish are just piled up near shore. They're about 3 to 5 miles out in big schools. They're kind of tough to catch at this point. They just don't know what to do with themselves. They want to come into the back country, but that water out in the Gulf is still a little bit cooler, so they're just hanging tight. And I'm telling you, you're going to see just the Redfish Express once we get these cold fronts, and which bodes well for November fishing, because this could probably run right through Thanksgiving and maybe even early December. So,
Steve, I'll give you some bad news. It's not coming today because it's hot up here, and it can't get cold. It can't get cold down there until it gets cold up here. I promise you.
Oh, hey, I'm with you. It's definitely that. So.
Hey, I got to ask you a question. They're having meetings all over the state on redfish, which I think I think we have more pressing matters than redfish, but that's another story. Yeah. What would you do?
Well, the argument, at least in our area, is that, with the, region just to the north of us, which we also fish as well, a lot of fishermen share it. They live in like Naples or, Fort Myers, and they make the trek down to the 10,000 Islands and vice versa. Pine Island, Estero Bay, all that's kind of intertwined. And so the thought from the diehard guys down south in the 10,000 Islands is the fact that redfish and snook, and up until this year, trout, were all closed north of our region, which, pretty much butts right up to it. People were coming south to harvest fish. And I somewhat agree with that. I think some of the guys that wanted some table fare definitely traveled south. Did it create a huge impact on our fishery? Don't know, to be honest with you. Fishing's been a little bit slower this year than years past. But I'm not noticing like a huge impact. But that's kind of like the hotbed story for us. Is,
so if,
currently the redfish are closed north of us, and it's doing phenomenal. Greg Stamper's region, all that stuff's doing great, and Pine Island and Estero Bay are real healthy with reds, and we're just okay, if you will. It's good, but it's not like it's been in years past. So. I don't know what to make of it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I do know that a 3-year closure up north certainly helped their fishery. So maybe we explore that for the 10,000 Islands. It's probably out of popular opinion, but I don't know,
So right now, if it was up to you, is your limit 1 redfish or 2?
Yeah, we only get the 1,
Okay.
So down south we only get the 1. I'd like to keep it at 1 at the very, very, I'm comfortable with what we have.
Okay.
27, one per person. I think it's okay. I'd rather take those for table fare and trout versus snook, to be honest with you.
Right.
So I probably wouldn't change anything. But we're also seeing evidence that, having it closed for several years up north is doing very, very well. So, it's, I don't know. It's slippery slope.
I've got some heartburn over that. These, when you get to a point where we can't eat fish anymore, I'm not crazy about that, Steve.
I'm with you. And we're at the point now. Look, I am still on the fence. There's a lot of things I disagree with. After all the hoopla of Goliath Grouper, now we got to pay $510.
Oh,
each,
that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, come on.
In a lifetime of dumb decisions, that one ranks the highest.
It is, and that's where I appreciate the workshops all across the state. And as far as having fisherman feedback, I don't know if the integrity's there, if they're really taking that feedback, or if it's just a show, if you will. I'll be bold enough to say that, but when they make decisions like that for $510 for a darn Goliath grouper, I'm a little concerned about our fishery.
Yeah, I'm with you. I just hope the rest of the government is not as inefficient as the South Atlantic Council. Thank you, Steve.
How about it? All right, you have a good week,
buddy. We appreciate it. Captain Steve Dahl. Our thanks to Steve Dahl for a great report where he said the redfish are hanging around offshore. They don't know what to do, come inshore or not. Let's hear what Greg Stamper's got to say. How we doing, Greg?
I'm doing very well, Rick. Can't complain at all. Red fishing for us has been pretty good. I've even seen a lot of nice silverfish starting to move their way into my neck of the woods. So
ocean
they're
fish.
all coming in.
Yep.
Yeah, they're coming in. If that fish is really light silver, he's coming from the ocean. If you catch one that's really dark in color, he's just been hanging out in our back bay. So they're starting to gang up and get together with each other. I also, this week, caught several of what I would call rat reds, which we've really been missing throughout my area for the last year. So there's some fish coming from somewhere. They didn't start where I'm at. They're definitely coming in. Now, snook fishing is still stellar. There are fish that are going to be on our beach, certainly until we get another good cold front or two. There is so much bait up and down our beaches right now. Those girls ain't going nowhere. Well, we'll call them boys because most of them are those juniors. We're talking about fish that are anywhere from, say, 17, 18 inches up to about 25, 26. Occasionally, we'll see some bigger ones cruising through there. But their main target right now are mostly these pilchards. These pilchards are anywhere from 2 to 3, 4 inches. And every once in a while, I'll see a small school of center mullet going by. But they're pretty much keyed in on those schools of pilchards that are moving up and down our beaches throughout the entire area.
Gotcha. That sounds fantastic. Nothing wrong with that report. Greg, right now, if we're having meetings all over the state about redfish, what would you do with the redfish limits right now if it was up to you?
What we currently have right now is one per person. It has to be between 18 and 27 inches. And ours have been closed now for what's it been, almost 3 years plus now since we had that really bad red tide back in 17, 18.
Right.
And that closure really made a huge difference in the size and the numbers of the fish that we're catching currently. I am still concerned that we don't have a lot of juvenile fish in our neighborhood, so the next batch of fish that are going to be that slot next year or the following year might be, a little bit on the downside. I'm totally supportive of keeping them closed in my area for at least another year, along with snook, to let this thing keep going. Because I'll be honest with you, Rick, I just don't know when we might have that next bad red tide. We need every one of those fish we can have to keep this thing going good.
That's interesting. So you'd leave the whole fishery closed next year?
I keep my reds and my snook closed for sure. We can catch plenty of trout, pompano, snappers, mackerels, triple tail. You let me know what you want to eat. I'll get you something to eat.
You live in a
personally.
You live in a good place, Greg Stamper.
I don't mind. If a recreational angler again keeps the fish if it's open, no problem there. But I feel like us guys, we're out there every day. I can whack them, and especially if I'm doing 2 trips. It can be pretty costly on the area that I'm in. But I understand recreational that they probably want something. Heck, I wouldn't even care if they just said that charter captains couldn't keep reds and snook. I'd be fine with that too.
Well, I tell you what, that says a lot right there. As long as you've been in the business, Cap, we appreciate it so much. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Absolutely. Tight lines, Rick. Get down here one of these days and catch a bunch of pompano with you.
Thanks, Greg. I'd love to. Thank you so much. We're going to check in with Ray Markham for the West Central Report. But first, let's hear from Shimano. There's one thing just about all our podcasters have in common. We all rely on Shimano gear when the day is on the line. Whether it's Jim Ross chasing a tarpon with a Saragusa spinner or Alan Sherman catching muttons on his bait runners, Shimano gear is everywhere in Florida. You see, Shimano builds a reel for just about every fish that swims in Florida waters, and it seems like every year they come out with new models with names that take me 6 months to know how to pronounce. But you know what? There's also a couple models that have stood the test of time and stand at the top of the brand even today. If I'm fishing an inshore spinner, be it fresh or salt, you can count on the fact I'm throwing a Shimano Stratic. That's just because they've been around the block and it just never fails. And if there's a blue water boat looking for a sea monster, I can almost promise you there's Shimano Tiagras pulling the big fish baits. Why do the best blue water guys count on Tiagras year after year? For the same reason I always throw a Stratic when I need to hook a redfish for my granddaughter. Because when the day is on the line, you can count on the time-tested Tiagra and Stratic from Shimano. That means it's time for West Central and one Captain Ray Markham. Raymond, how are you?
Greetings. Doing absolutely fantabulous.
Golly, everybody seems to be happy this week. Just maybe a little hint of cool when you step outside in the morning?
Well, in the morning, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like normal, in the afternoons. But, I mean, the morning is nice. It's crisp. It's different.
Tell me about your fishing.
Oh, brother, we still got a bunch of redfish boiling around out there. Lots of redfish. The snook fishing's picking up even more. Little slower tides over the past week, so hopefully as we come up to the next, full moon we got coming, things will pick up a little bit in that realm. But 2 big things still going on. We still got kingfish moving in, a little more each day. We still got lots of Spanish mackerel and big ones, lots of mangrove snapper, and the big deal this week that I've heard from guys, 50 per boat, they're not keeping that many, but triple tail.
Wait a minute.
Triple tail.
How many?
Yeah,
how many per boat?
50.
50?
50. Is that crazy?
They're catching them many?
Here's what well, they're not keeping them, and it's certainly not. But they're just playing with them.
Wow.
they're taking a limit home, but coming the end of this week, stone crab season opens, and the guys are allowed to put their traps in a little bit before the season actually opens, so that they can have something to pull come the 15th. And when it gets around to that, it's gonna even get better, because the longer these traps stay in the water, the more marine growth they get, the more shrimp and crustaceans and things that are attracted to the ropes and the floats and the traps and that. Mm-hmm. And plus, there's fresh bait in each one of them, so it's an attractant all by itself, a little tiny mini reef.
Wow, that's a fantastic report. I hadn't heard of anything anywhere near that on Triple Tail, and I'm happy for you. And that's very good news.
This is the first I've seen anything like this. Yeah.
Wow, that is
crazy.
That is fantastic. Ray, that's a great report. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
Yes, sir. I hope so.
All right, I want you to keep the Triple Tail till I can get there, okay?
I'll do my best.
Okay, buddy. I appreciate it so much. Captain Ray Markham.
You know what Yamaha Outboards love? The genuine formula and consistency of Yamalu marine engine oils. Outboards are subjected to punishing conditions like high loads, salt, and humidity, a mix that automotive oils can't handle. Yamalu full synthetic and marine performance formulas are certified to protect against friction and corrosion for reliable performance every time. Find Yamalu marine oils at your nearest Yamaha Outboard dealer. Locate them at yamahaaoutboards.com/dealers. Yamaha, reliability starts here.
Hey, Raj, being consistent is a mark of a quality product. If you've been Florida's #1 chum for over 10 years, there's got to be a reason.
For 10 years, Tournament Master Chum has lived up to its name. That's why more tournament pros insist on Tournament Master than any other chum. It's the only chum with Menhaden milk mixed right in. That means it gets the scent out faster and deeper than any other brand of chum. It comes in a grind size for every species, from kingfish to catching bait. Your fishing time is way too precious to you second-rate chum. Bring the action to you by insisting on Tournament Master Chum. It's worth every penny.
When you're ready for the finest in custom-made flat spay or inshore offshore hybrids, you are ready to meet the Young family in Inglis, Florida. For over 21 years, the Young family has built custom boats one at a time for every type of fishing. Nothing can sneak up on a flat quite like the Gulf Shore flats boats, and I've never fished a better hybrid than the Young 24s and 27s. Rob Young is a naval architect who takes tremendous pride in each and every build for each and every customer that wants their boat custom built exactly the way they want it. Is it time for you to move up? Are you ready to own the finest boat built? Then you need to visit the Young Boat Facility in Inglis, Florida, or check them out online at youngboats.com. Now we're going to hop up into the Big Bend, find out what's going on in Homosassa with Captain William Toney. How are you, Cap?
Doing good right here in downtown hot Homosassa. I'm looking at a big old storm coming in like it's, July, not October, but the only thing that differentiates, between July and October right now is the mornings are, low humidity, about 70, but you wait till about 10 and it gets slick, calm, and hot.
It feels so good at daylight now. I love getting out and fishing a few minutes at daylight now. What are you catching?
Absolutely. Right now, okay, our trout bite. If you're looking for trout here on the Big Bend, pop and cork rigs, you need two colors, watermelon red flake and glow has been your best soft plastics under the pop and cork. What we're fishing is, broken bottom. So when I say that, a lot of times, we'll say yellow bottom, and it's basically a lot of sponge, a lot of, hard, brain coral and sandy bottom with a lot of the rock grass, we call it, or sargassum. Those trout are in that. Now, when you get to the point of the day where it gets slick calm, you might as well just hang that up and move on to some type of other fishing. So what I suggest, if you got shallow rocks, look for some nice mangrove snappers. We've been getting them on light tackle, and for me, 3 to 8 foot of water catching 14 to 15-inch mangrove snappers is a blast.
You won't believe me, and you won't listen to me like nobody else will, But I'm telling you,
All right, Dad.
to go buy 2 of those Brim Buster fiberglass cane poles.
Oh my God! I don't. That would be the whippiest thing I've ever tried to whip one in my life.
Dude, it is a hoot. I'm telling you, those.
I could imagine. I never thought about that. I'm just, so excited to get them that big and shallow. But the one thing I will say about mangrove snappers, they're not a dumb fish. So as soon as you get the bite going with them, and you pluck 2 or 3 or 4, they'll wisen up.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to sit there and continue to mess with them, what I suggest is take the 1/8 ounce jig head off and take a 2/0 owner hook and thread it, through the tail of a live shrimp and free line it with the lightest leader that you could possibly use, like a 15-pound fluorocarbon, and they'll start biting that. But then again, when that happens, what I do is crank up and move to another spot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's how I solved that problem. But there's some big white grunts mixed in there with them. And when I say big, some of these are, 12 to 15 inch grunts, which are well worth cleaning if you like to eat fish. Now, there is a lot of triple tail here on the Big Bend right now, but finding that 18 inch one is just, it's eluded me the last couple weeks. I had one spot today. There was a cloud of them, probably about 15 to 16 fish, and all of them were about 15 to 16 inches.
Wow.
Now, there's a bunch. So next year's crop, but you know what? If you got a fly rod, like an 8-weight with a Clouser minnow or a little crab pattern, I tell you what, you could have fun with them. And they're about as dumb as they can get. I mean, you can throw a bare jig head in there, and some of them will even strike it. So, to me, if it's, if you're going to sit there and swarm out them, just get a few and leave. You don't want to kill them. We're talking next year's fish. So when you get done messing with triple tail, the redfish has been very good. But what I suggest is start inside. So a lot of people here on the Big Bend will start on the outside keys on the incoming tide, go east. We're finding most of our redfish back in the first tier of the keys that are around your major creeks, like Little Homosassa, St. Martin's River, over there toward Coon Gap and things in Crystal River, and then down in Chazawiska, back in there behind Chazawiska Point, all the way toward the mouth of Chazawiska River. So that's where we're finding a lot of redfish. On the outside, it's a hit and miss. This time of year, normally we should have big schools of redfish. So far, me personally, maybe I just have missed out or something. I have not ran into one. Now, I've had some good spots where we've caught, multiple fish, 8 to 12 to 15 fish off one spot. And those are very rare right now. But there's times past, this time last year and the years before, you could get in there to where it's just a feeding frenzy. And I have not seen those fish this year. So they bypassed us or they just haven't showed up. So we'll just see what happens.
I'm betting they're waiting on that water temp to drop about 2 or 3 more degrees.
I'm with you.
It's just too darn hot.
And we had a mild front 3 weeks ago, and it dropped our water down to 75 degrees, 74 degrees, somewhere in there. It was 68, 67 in the morning. It was actually at the very end of scallop season, and I was thinking, well, you know what? If I had to get in that water right now, I couldn't do it. It's just a little bit too chilly for me. And we did have some redfish show up on a little splitter, but now we're back up to 82 degrees.
Mm-hmm.
So, summertime conditions. But one good thing right now, I can tell you what, if you like to get on the inshore grouper, they're still there, but the window is shutting quickly. There seems to be less and less folks getting them on the casting plugs. What I've talked to a lot of anglers going after them right now, using threadfin herring or live pinfish, starting from 8 to 14 feet. And then the offshore guys, which, our area 1 foot per mile, are getting them pretty good out there around 20 foot of water to 25 foot of water.
Perfect. What a great report, William. We appreciate it so much, and thanks for the advice on the trout rigs. Telling you, you get your fiberglass pole. Listen to me. You put 12-pound fluorocarbon on it, and you make a speckled perch rig. You got the little bitty cork, okay, little bitty split shot, about 3 inches to a little 3/0 owner live bait hook. Oh, my goodness, you will laugh your heart out. It is hilarious.
I tell you, okay, well, here's the scenario, Rick. I'm putting 4 anglers on board with big brim busters, and you're going to come and you're going to help mate when they all start slinging them over to the side.
That would be incorrect. I appreciate you, Cap. We'll talk next week.
All right. You have a great week, Rick.
Thanks, William. Our thanks to William Toney for all the news from the Big Bend. Now, let's get into the Northwest, and we're going to interrupt Captain Kevin Lanier's charter for a quick report. How we doing, Cap?
Hey, Captain Rick, we're doing real good tonight. It's a beautiful night out.
Good. You red fishing?
Yes, sir. We're out for some trout and some redfish tonight.
You catching them?
Not yet. We're still catching bait right now. Alewives and pinfish and everything are cooperating.
All right. Tell me what's been going on. I'll let you get back to work.
Hey, well, we've been absolutely slaying the trout and the redfish over the last few evenings.
Oh, good.
Big boat's been down for mechanical. You know how that goes from time to time.
I do.
But the inshore fishing's been phenomenal up here in our way.
Gotcha. Okay. What you're live baiting, fishing them, obviously?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Right.
10-1.
What size fish?
A lot of legal reds. We've got some really oversized, nice big ones, and trout, lots of keeper-sized trout, and some croakers and some flounder, and just about everything that swims you can eat.
That's good. Remember, you got 4 more days to fish for flounder.
That's true.
Yep.
That's true. Well, we're getting ready to do some red snapper fishing starting on Friday, so we're looking forward to that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Your season opens back up. Go get them, Cap.
Yep.
We'll talk to you next week.
All right, Captain Rick. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Kevin. Our thanks to Kevin Lanier interrupting his charter to talk with us a minute. I know his people are ready to put some more fish in the boat. Let's head on out to the Panhandle and check in with Tyler Massey. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing good, Rick. How are you guys?
Good, good. What's biting out of Destin?
So we are, inshore fishing and offshore fishing has been, both been still pretty good. We've been doing more bottom fishing the last week or so. We're catching vermilion snappers offshore. Almaco jacks are biting on a lot of the bigger wrecks. Catching a few scamp groupers up to, about 250 foot of water, fishing rocks and ledges, and a few amberjacks around, but they haven't been biting all that hot and heavy the last, few days. But, I think it's more we haven't had very, good baits. The hardtails have kind of disappeared off the beach, it seems like. But, if they show back up, we'll be able to catch a few more amberjacks before the end of the season here.
Gotcha. Now, you got snapper season coming up again on Friday?
Yep. This on the 15th, I believe it is. The open course, and we get to catch them just on our federally permitted boats until November 6th. So that'll be good. A nice little bonus into the year. Snapper season is always good. They bite really well in the fall. So we're looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, I'm sure
I wouldn't be surprised if the state opens up kind of like they did last year for a few weekends for recreational anglers as well, but we haven't heard anything on that yet.
Okay. No, that sounds good. And you're right. Snapper bites so good in the fall. I'm sure you guys will be limited out every day. Is it 1 per person over there or 2?
Yeah, we get 2 per person at 16 inches.
Yep.
So,
yep.
But we try to keep them in the, try not to keep any too small fish, but in the 5 to 10 pound range is pretty average for us.
Gotcha. Hey, any word on the white marlin bite?
So the white marlin bite is it's slowing down a little bit, but the guys fishing those offshore fads that we've talked about before, they had a few shots at them this past week, and if the weather's good, it's definitely a good place to go. And I think we got a couple more weeks if we have keep having some warm weather. It's definitely gonna be productive out there. You get shots at blue marlins and white marlins, sailfish, wahoos, tunas, and dolphin. All the pelagic fish can be found around those fad structures, and I'd say that's where I'd head if I was looking to do some offshore trolling.
That's fantastic. Hey, let me ask you a question. You get a lot of guys that trailer down from Alabama and up north and such, and going to fish Destin. Everybody thinks Destin's the blue water, just the greatest blue water destination ever, blue water nirvana, if you will. What don't they know?
A lot of them don't know a lot of stuff. People bring their boats down from north, and we get them from the west also over here in the Panhandle. And, I'd say that, some of them think they have an idea. it's just they need to be prepared about a lot of different things. You know, where to even launch their boat as a start. If you have a certain size boat, some launches aren't as good as other launches.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely need to plan out that aspect to start out with. Also, you know, even like something simple like that we think is like catching bait and that type of thing can really, you know, make or break a fishing trip.
Sure can.
And a lot of the guys just don't have the information or knowledge on what to use to catch bait. You know, what kind of sabiki rig or what size sabiki rig or where to even try. So, you know, we see a lot of people come down. They have a 6-foot cast net and think they can catch cigar minnows in 20 foot of water.
No,
it's just not going to work out for them.
I don't think so, Cap.
You know, I'd say, you know, start simple. You know, ask at the local tackle stores, you know, what to use and how to do things. And those guys usually pretty helpful.
Well, if you want my honest opinion, I think the smartest thing they can do is for the first day of their vacation, they can call Tyler Massey and they can book a charter for a day. And then they got a little bit of a feel as to what's going on.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit. And maybe even the first trip, just do some charter fishing. And then the second time you come down, bring your boat if you feel comfortable in the area for sure too. But yeah, we do see a lot of that. And, you know, there are a few guys in the area as well that will you can hire and they will go on your boat with you. You know, I don't do too much of that because I'm kind of busy, but I've got a couple of buddies that you know are great for hire guides. They bring tackle and everything, and they come on the boat with you and really, you know, take you as a guided trip on your own boat.
That's an excellent idea. Excellent idea. And of course, I'm assuming the tackle shop is still open there in Gulf Breeze.
Yeah, we have Gulf Breeze Bait and Tackle, and then Outcast Bait and Tackle are two you know, great spots to get some great information over here, and they've got everything that anyone will need to have a good fishing trip.
Thank you, Tyler. We appreciate it. Please tell me we can check with you next week.
I'll be here, Rick. We'll see you.
Captain Tyler Massey. Hey, that wraps up our trip around the state for this week, and it has been a lot of fun. Everybody sounds like they're in a pretty good mood. Even though it really hasn't cooled off yet, there are a lot of fish around. Captain David Borey is reporting excellent red fishing and phenomenal flounder fishing. 4 more days until we can't catch flounder anymore. From recording this, that means that on October 15th, flounder are closed. Jim Ross was so happy with the snook fishing. Well, I tell you, John Earhart described the inshore fishing off of Stewart as a dream come true. Even grumpy old Alan Sherman was in a great mood. Said the mullet are all over the beach. The mahi is the best bite they've seen in the fall in quite some time, and snook and tarpon are tracing all of those mahis or mullet schools. Brandon Storin, muttons on the patch reef, legal fish in 12 feet of water. Unbelievable. That's outstanding news. Steve Dahl says there's plenty of reds down there now. Both he and Greg Stamper reported plenty of reds, but both of them were kind of hesitant on opening it back up or opening it to 2 fish per person. I found that interesting. Ray Markham says that all the fall stuff is going on. They've even got lots of kingfish. Thank goodness William Toney, the trout are chewing on the popping cork rigs with watermelon and glow, and he's having a ball catching mangrove snapper. Kevin Lanier is doing very well on inshore fish this week. His big boat's been down, but he is pounding on the reds and trout. Said he's catching plenty of legals of both. Tyler Massey, the same kind of news. Said the grouper bite has been pretty good. The vermilions are biting, and their red snapper for federally permitted vessels will open back up on October 15th. So, good news on the fishing front all the way around. I know I've sure enjoyed bringing you all the news from the East and West Coast and the Keys. The Florida Sportsman Action Spotter is brought to you each and every week by Yamaha. Reliability starts here. By Shimano, bringing people and nature together. By Tournament Master Chum, it's the best chum on earth. By Nosara Paradise Rentals, your dream billfish vacation. By D.O.A. Lures, the unfair advantage. And Young Boats. You want the finest in flat spay and offshore hybrids? You need to check out youngboats.com. Until next week, for Florida Sportsman Magazine, I'm Captain Rick Riles, and we'll see you on the rip.